All right. Good morning. We are here with our weekly talks with me, Jasiah, and the great Pete. And today we wanted to continue on with our conversation from last week. And I've titled it today The Smaller Steps to Get There to Transformational Shifts. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because last week, in the last episode that you could check out, Pete was talking about ways to when you're at the growth edge of your own growth edge, ways to listen in to yourself. There's a 3-step process that he mentioned in there, that for some people it's really easy to get there, and for other people it just isn't. So I wanted to dive in deeper to smaller steps. If you can't get to stillness, if meditation is hard for you, if you don't know what it means to listen in to yourself, or you feel like you have blocks around that, then this is the episode for you, pretty much. So we'll go ahead and I'll give it over to you, Pete, and we can talk about the few things that you had mentioned. But go ahead and start where you'd like to start.
Yeah, it's one where I'll think of like back to probably when I first got started, if not a little before. Um, Being able to meditate wasn't easy, right? It was one of the most, I say, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I say part of it is because I had misconceptions about even meditation, of what it really meant, right? I remember going back thinking it was your legs are crossed and you have to have your hands in that position and you're just supposed to go and magic was supposed to happen. Uh, but the truth is, it's not that at all. And it's one where our mind should be and always is working, right? Being silent doesn't necessarily mean being silent. I guess one of the big things I look at it as is being non-judgmental.
Right.
That's how I kind of view, I guess, silence when I think about it just now. I would call it being non-judgmental to the thoughts that come in. They're not good. They're not bad. They're not pure. They're not evil. They're just there. Yeah. And it was one where one of my mentors, Jerry Kine, used to talk about how he used to have people write an affirmation, a phrase, a sentence on an index card. And all he would do was have them read it out loud, right? And so, like, if the affirmation was, I love snakes, when in reality, I'm afraid of snakes, I may read that, go, you know what? I love snakes. And then just sit there for a moment to see what pops in, right? That counter argument that says, no, you don't, right? And for me, I found it helpful to write it out, whatever thought came in. Some people can do it mentally. They don't need to write it. They just remember. I found it helpful to write it out. And then I would say it again. I love snakes. And stop for a moment, take a breath, see what came back. It could be, nope, you really hate snakes, Pete. Stop this, right? Stop trying to trick me here, right? And you go, I love snakes. And you do it enough times, you will go deeper and deeper inside your mind going, this is why we don't like snakes. When we were 7 years old, we got bit by a snake. Hold on. So it's one where we think about it. And is that really loud on your end?
It's pretty loud, yeah.
All right, give me one. I'll let
Okay.
you.
All right. So while Pete deals with the dogs, we were just talking about how when you have that sentence on the card and you read it aloud and it's not true, but you keep telling yourself, um, your mind is going to keep digging and digging for an answer until you get an answer that is more true. And what he was mentioning before is that your mind is just going to keep digging until you get an answer, really. And so something at first just goes, no, we don't like them. No, we don't like them. This is the reason why we don't like them. And now you have something to work with. Now you have something to investigate, and like he was talking about last week, then you could sit in stillness. Then, for example, you could take that which your mind gave you to the I don't like snakes and this is why, and then sit in the stillness and go into your investigation mode and listen to that and see if there's any way to, heal, listen, transform, and there might be something really potent in there for you. So when he gets back, he can talk more about that. Some other practices were, to be non judgmental when you are listening to yourself. And that's something that can obviously be quite difficult to do. How do you sit with yourself and listen to yourself and not be judgmental? And of course, there's many steps to it, but I would say the first thing is to just recognize that you could try and notice that when a judgmental, idea comes in, here comes Pete, that you might be able to just recognize it and just recognize that you're being judgmental to yourself in that moment. And then we can get into it with Pete after he comes back with the other ways that we could do that. So now that Pete's back,
Yes.
I just was kind of overviewing the sentences on the cards, and that what as you keep asking the question, the mind has to keep going deeper and deeper. Then once you come up with something, you can sit in that stillness. You can sit in that stillness and then like listen, and kind of like you were talking about earlier, say like, okay, this came up and what might this mean? And there might be a healing there or a transformation there or investigation, definitely. So that was kind of where I ended off with that.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. When we have that first answer of like, I don't like snakes, that's a very surface answer. We already know that answer, right? And when we keep going deeper, it will get to the real reason why we don't. Now, we can't change the real reason, but we get to go into the next part where I really love and makes a big difference is we get to investigate it, like you said, and we get to look at it differently, right? We get to look at it with a new, fresh pair of eyes. It's one where one of my main studies was criminology, right? The study of the criminal mind type of thought process. And in a lot of my studies, they were like with cold cases, sometimes all it takes is a fresh pair of eyes to look at it. The same information to see something that was missed or wasn't seen before. And it's one where that's where I learned the acronym STOP, right? So STOP. And so the S literally stands for stop. Stop what we're doing, right? Newsflash. We got this new information, right? Let's stop and look at it, right? T is to take a breath, right? Just take it and go, wow, like, okay. We don't want our adrenaline really rushing. We don't want stuff flowing. We don't want even just the endorphins calming us down. We just want to be like, okay, we got this, right? The O is really the best part for me because we get to observe. We get to look at that reason we just got for ourselves of like, oh man, when I was 7, I was bit by a snake, right? And we get to look at it and go, okay, so what was going on? Like, let me observe the situation, the crime scene, if you will, of what happened. And you go, well, it was a birthday party. One of the other kids was pulling the snake's tail. It could be, you know what? He didn't look happy and they shouldn't have brought him out. You know what? I was running so fast. I was moving fast. I scared the snake. The snake bit me, right? We get to really look at what's going on, like what happened. And once we observe really what happened, we get to then find a new perspective to take, right? We get to look at it and go, well, it was that snake, not all snakes, that one. And when we can really get to that new perspective, how does that change every other situation, right? The mind will begin to filter through those times we saw a stick, right? And I went, snake, I got to be afraid, to go, that was a silly moment. That was just a stick. I had no need to be afraid of that. It would go through times where maybe you saw a snake on a path and it would go, well, that snake was just trying to get away from me. It didn't even want to be near me. Like it was afraid of me, right? And it'll change that one. And it'll slowly and sometimes quickly change all of them, right? Like dominoes falling over in a row, it will just go, right? And next thing you know, you're looking at these old situation with these fresh eyes going, it wasn't so bad. Now, I will say when that happens, we're not like, man, you know what? I love snakes now. It's not how it works. What it does is it puts you in a neutral state. And I think that is a very important thing to really keep in our mind. It doesn't bring us to the opposite, it brings us to the neutral. Because what it does, and when we add it with that non judgmental part, it allows the ability for new experiences to create a new result. You know, and we have to at that moment be willing to go, okay, so next time I see a snake, how am I going to react differently, right? How am I going to see it differently? And it's one where I like snakes. One person, I love snakes, but I work with a lot of people who don't. It's a very common thing, you know. And it's always interesting time and time again when they go, Pete, like, yeah, the snake was out, and I wasn't like, oh my goodness, I got to run away. It was like, oh, all right, let me be more inquisitive, right? Let me
Well,
see.
I also feel like it's bringing it from the shadow. It's like it's coming from a reactive place, and just us being used to like letting our reactions dictate us, to instead, finding out that like that evil boogeyman that was in your closet for 10 years was just a rat rustling your jacket. And like all of a sudden, you know, you pulled it out of the closet. It's come out of the shadow. The whole idea that you've put around this thing gets brought to the light, dismantled, and you realize that it's actually something else. And I feel like if if it isn't something else, um like, I mean, if you can't find it in that way, you can do work around it, because now it's available to you, whether you're with a practitioner or yourself, right? So, which might be, what I mean is, if it can't just kind of be dismantled by you thinking or feeling about it, or noticing it, in this kind of real time world, then you have something to sink into your practice and into your inner listening and your inner work, reimagining, right? Situations and stuff like that, to try to retrain yourself in that way. So it seems like it's a great way to just sometimes bring it from the shadow, and that might be enough, all the way to having a context and some like material to work with
Yeah.
yourself or with a practitioner, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's one where everyone, I say, reacts differently, right? And this is, I say, the one thing I love about our work is there's no one answer for every person.
Right.
And we have to be willing to find the right way, knowing it might not be the first time. You know, I'm a true believer of all the transformational shifts we make are a journey, right? And every journey has multiple paths. And sometimes we got to go down one path to realize it's not the one we need to be on, to go on the next one,
Right.
right? But we have to be willing to make those choices to go, well, let me give this what I got to find out,
Right.
you know, because yes, meditation is probably going to be perfect for a lot of people, you know, but some people might not be ready for it, but it doesn't mean they still can't make the shifts, right?
So can we get into that a little bit? Like, if meditation is really new for someone, or they're too anxious to sit with it, or even someone who's done it really, for a long time, and just when they, sometimes it just doesn't work that well. Um, you know, there's many ways, right? It's not like you just start meditating and then you can do it all the time. Like, we have this monkey mind and we have emotions and stuff.
Yeah.
But for people who it's really, really incredibly new. Um, what are some suggestions that you have to?
So there was a doctor, man, I think we're talking the 1980s. I think his name was Gregory Respoit, something like that. And he used to work with Olympic athletes. And he used to talk about how all of us have a threshold. Some people have high thresholds, some people have low thresholds, but we all have them. And it's really important to understand that your threshold means that's just your limit. Now, if we think about it and like going to the gym, we understand this clear as day, right? You can't go into the gym if you never lift weights and start going into 200 pounds, right? But if you go to the gym for a year, you'll probably can get close to that range if you're really beginning to push yourself, right? Your threshold can move. But at the same time, if you went to the gym for a year, got to 200 pounds, and took a year off and never exercised, your threshold would change, right? It's not a stagnant thing. You don't get it to one level and it stays there forever. We really understand that on a physical aspect of things. But the truth is, these thresholds mentally, are just as real. And so a lot of us, we go, Pete, like I can't focus for a half hour. That's okay. That's your threshold is not there. It might be 5 minutes. And just by being aware of that, you get to go, well, that means I can't do the half hour because I'll lose out. 25 minutes would just really be a waste. Practice the 5 minutes. Go to 6 minutes, then 8, then 10, right? Increasing that threshold just like you would weights, through practice and repetition. Because that's when you go, Pete, I can't focus for more than 30 seconds. Great. Don't try to. At first, do the best you can in that 30 seconds. When you feel like you're doing that really well, go to 45 seconds. Go to a minute. At that rate, you won't feel burnt out or that it's impossible or that you can't do it. Because it really is, whether it's focus or the ability to read fast or to understand, the material we're reading is different for everyone. We have different thresholds. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means we have to understand ourselves and then slowly increase so we can get there. Right?
Well, and that segues it really great into this part right here, which is how to be non-judgmental, which I think is obviously really key, to so many aspects of life, especially healing and growing, and especially when you're noticing your threshold, like, or noticing that your threshold's not the same that it used to be, or feeling like you aren't where you want to be, right? So having be nice to just talk a little bit about like the judgmental mind and the non-judgmental mind and ways to work with it so that while you're doing this work, it doesn't just sabotage you, get in the way, all of those possibilities.
Yeah. So depending on like who you learn from, right? Some people call it just the conscious mind is the judgmental mind. Unconscious mind is non-judgmental. I believe it's not that simple. Where we either have that gatekeeper, right, which is how some people learn it. Some people learn it as a critical factor or a critical faculty, right? There's that part of our mind that goes, I can't do this, or it goes, I can do this, right? And if something comes in of the contrary, it rejects it, right? So if I went, man, I'm the smartest person in the world, and a thought came in that went, nope, you're stupid, that critical faculty, that gatekeeper would say, get out of here, because I believe I'm the smartest person in the world. We just shrug it off. No big deal. That's being judgmental in its own right, right? The same thing. Then if we go, man, I'm stupid, we do something smart, it goes, get out of here, smartness. Like, that's not for me. That's for someone else. That's being judgmental. It's saying what we can and can't do. Being non-judgmental to me is when we just look at the information that comes in and we just go, okay, that was something good or that was something bad. It's not good or bad in its own right, but it's an experience that we get to label, right? So maybe I say something that I may look at and go, oh man, that's not good. If it's wintertime, there's ice on the ground and I slip and fall, right? I may look at that and go, man, that's not good, right? I hurt my back, right? But at the same time, the non-judgmental side is going, you know what? Even though that hurt, even though I'm embarrassed, maybe it just saved me from getting in my car 30 seconds sooner and getting into an accident leaving my driveway, right? Because maybe now I know my whole driveway is icy and I have to do something first to make it not icy. You know, that's taking that moment that we would deem as bad and realize that it wasn't good or bad. It was just something to teach me that I need to do more. You know,
And it's also, compassion,
mm.
which I think is, you know, in a certain right, the opposite of, judgmentalness. And, um, compassion is taught in many ways to be, one of the, you know, foundational pieces of healing, listening, into yourself, being kind to yourself, is forming compassion. And I don't think that you can really be compassionate with judgmentalness, and especially if you're trying to, move up in your life or heal something, or, get that new job, or, anything like that. I mean, judgment does move some people, it definitely
Mm-hmm.
is sometimes people's motors, but um, it just seems really important, that internal critic, and that judgmentalness seems like, very often there that seems to be a block and struggle for a lot of people, um, to move forward and past. So I wanted to say, like we mentioned, we're going to start kind of changing the format a little bit, and we had talked about, always having a little like practical like piece. So I'm not sure if that's possible today, but I wanted to check in and see if there's maybe something we can do, if you want to just lead like a 2 or 3 minute just a guided, um, something for the people to sort of feel and experience something like this, and give people something to think on and work on.
Yeah, I would say a good thing is everyone watching this, just begin to think of something you want more of. Whether it's a better relationship, money, career, purpose, right? Just go, I want more purpose, right? Or whatever. And just repeat it in your mind slowly, right? And directly, right? It's one where it's not, well, I want purpose. It's, no, I want purpose, right? I want love. And just take a moment and just listen, right? And if nothing comes at first, awesome. Say it again. I want purpose. I want love. I want that relationship. I want to understand my partner better, right? As you repeat that phrase that's personal to you, and you take a moment in between, I like to take a breath because it gives me just that moment of just quietness, that stillness, and just if nothing pops up, say it again and again and again. Soon you might notice a picture, a sound, a feeling, a thought, a glimmer of something. And you go, cool, thank you for that, but I want more. And you repeat the initial phrase again and again and again until it gives you that next piece. And this is one where it's Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins They really talk about their exercise is 7 layers deep. You really want to get to 7 layers of that onion, and you will hit some profound information. And I would love to say we could do 7 layers in 2 minutes, but it might take an hour. It might take days. Yeah, you may only handle, hey, Pete, I only can handle that first level today. Awesome. Stop at that first level today. Go to the second level tomorrow, and maybe the third and fourth day. But stay with it. If we look at history of Napoleon Hill, Andrew Carnegie, the longer we hold it in our mind, the more the answers will come. So when we have these new thoughts, it's in our best interest to never let them go, despite the information that comes. That's going to be my practical for this week. It's to keep doing it over and over and over.
I love that. That's so great. And that's nice because you don't have to write it on a card. You, like you said, I had it written down here, write a sentence on a card, which is great and really easy, but also to just have it in your mind. So just to wrap up today, just trying to offer some other ideas of ways, smaller steps to, get there when sometimes it feels hard to just get still, get quiet, listen, get away from the judgmental mind, all those things. So we've touched on a couple of things that you can do, including this little stop technique and writing a sentence on a card, reading it over and over, and paying attention to the thoughts in between, or say it in your mind, and with each breath listen to what happens within that breath, and that you keep going, and you'll find interesting things within the 2 minutes that's on here. And there's 7 layers deep is said to go to really get to that place. So give yourself time. It's a kind of a cool practice. You don't need much, but some attention and breathing and just, a statement. So that's great. Any last words to wrap up today, Pete?
Yeah, just understand, think of your attention, your focus, your ability to grow the same as a muscle. The muscles in your arms and legs, it needs that time and repetition and constant use to grow.
Yeah, good. That's a really nice reminder. It's a really nice reminder, and it brings up what you said before about the thresholds. So not only is like this process and the thinking and the mind and the getting there like a muscle, and and just to remember our threshold, and it being a great example, like the gym. You're not going to expect to lift 250 pounds the first time. You see where you're at, and then you just work that for the time you can until you see that you can do a little bit more, and just be compassionate with yourself in those times, and just your threshold will grow and evolve and build because you're not stuck in that spot.
Yeah.
So, well, great. Thank you always, Pete, so much. And as always, anyone is welcome to reach out to us about anything that we've said today, or if you have any questions, reach out to us on social media. And until then, thank you. Okay.